Welcome back. Well, I've been getting a lot of requests for updates on the landscaping, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, obviously, both hands here, that means Audie's not in my lap, because if he were, I would be petting him, and what that means is he hasn't yet figured out that I'm filming. So, we'll see how long it takes him to get his furry little butt in here and get his face on camera. All right, we'll be back in a minute. Well, it's a good time to talk about the landscaping updates because my neighbor Jane was over yesterday and made me an offer that I could not refuse, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And the grass has grown up enough so that it needs to be mowed now. And before I mow it, you might as well see what it looks like. So let's get started with the front yard. And this is the area where they had to pile in all that sort of debris dirt and then a layer of topsoil on top. They needed to fill in all of those surface roots, and because it was just not only hard to get a lawnmower through, but I kept thinking one of these days the UPS guy is going to fall, break his neck, and sue me. So that had to be dealt with. So let's take a look at that first. This is the front yard now that it's been regraded and seeded. The grass needs to be cut, as you can see, but because the straw, let me get getting tighter on that so you can see, the straw is still here in the grass. Not exactly sure how that's going to work out. To tell the truth, I'm kind of afraid to cut it right now, but we'll see. You can see the straw. Now the entire yard under that grass is completely full of straw. And the grass has grown up to the extent that you can't even really see the straw in most areas. But as I'm sure you noticed, because I pointed it out to you, there are some areas where the grass seed didn't take. We had some brutally dry days, followed by really wet, humid days, and I'm not sure the grass really liked those conditions. But did very well, especially considering how dry it was the first 2 weeks after it was planted. So next we're going to take a walk across the yard. We're still in the front yard at this point, and we're going to look at the oak tree, the one that's in the front yard. And this is the close relative of the one that fell on the schoolhouse. I had 3 250-year-old 40-foot oak trees in my yard until one of them decided to do a runner and take off out of my yard. Thank you very much. So we're going to go over, take a look at that oak tree and the plants that are around that one. This area around the oak tree seems to be doing well. These plants are Stellodoro daylilies. They're small, yellow, and reblooming, and they were removed so they could work around the tree and then replanted, and they all seem to be doing pretty well. They're coming back, so that's good. We're going to take a look at some of the other daylilies too. Well, Audie just came in, figured out I was doing a video, but he's annoyed with me, so he's not coming into my lap. He's laying on the floor because it's my job to go pick him up and put him in my lap, because if I really loved him, I would do that. I'll explain that all later, as you will see for yourself. All right, the oak tree with the Stelladoro daylilies around it, those daylilies had been around the tree before, but they were getting choked out by weeds, and it looks like they all have some new green growth coming up, really good. On the other hand, it's a common variety, and if I need to replace any of those plants, it's going to be super easy. Stelladoro is a dwarf daylily. It's, I don't know, not even 2 feet tall, and it's just bright yellow, and it reblooms. So you get 2 blooms, or sometimes more, out of these plants. If they're in a good location and they're well fertilized and they're strong and healthy, sometimes they will just bloom. They do their initial bloom in June, and then they'll just bloom sporadically for the rest of the season. Very, very nice little plants because they're very tolerant of all kinds of conditions. Now, as you probably noticed from the aspens, those were the first pair of trees I showed you. They just had rings of mulch around them, and I haven't decided yet what I want to put in there. So I'm open to ideas. Zone 7 deep shade. Let's see what you can come up with. All right, next we're going to take a look at the hedge that separates my property from my next door neighbor, Robin. Robin is the one with the fence that's having some problems, and she's also the one who came over and weeded my whole yard for me last fall when I went into the hospital to have my knee replacement surgery. She is a very considerate, well, that's beyond a considerate neighbor. I should nominate her for sainthood. A considerate neighbor is somebody who gets your paper when you're gone for the weekend. But weeding your yard, that takes it to a whole new level. So this is Robin's hedge, and it's planted right along the property line. But I maintain the hedge because I maintain my own hedge. So it's easy for me because I have the equipment, the electric hedge trimmer and so on, and it's all part of the same process. So I had my side mulched, and I'm going to have to talk to Robin and see how she feels about having the landscapers mulch her side when they next come in to top off the mulch, because that would be valuable for her, I would think. So let's take a look at the hedge. This is the hedge that separates my property from the neighbor's property. My neighbor is Robin next door. We took a look at her yard. She has, let's see if I can get it, very pretty hostas everywhere. They mulched around the bottom of the hedge. As you can see, weeds are springing up a little, so that's going to have to be dealt with. But overall, pretty good. We have an area here, and this is between the oak tree and the hedge, that has not taken the grass seed well. But now, nothing is going to be planted in that mulch. That's just for the hedge and the hedge alone. I'm not going to use that as a flower bed of any sort. But again, you saw there was a little area where the grass didn't take. That area is in very deep shade all the time. Winter, summer, it doesn't matter, deep, deep, deep shade. So I can't say I was overwhelmingly surprised. And of course, you also saw there are a lot of weeds in that front yard. So we're going to have to do whatever it is they do. The landscapers have some method of dealing with that I'm not going to get involved with, because I have no success killing weeds. None. It's just, no. So that's up to them. Next, I want to show you my backyard. Well, this is really the major improvement. I now have a nice green backyard. Yes, it still has some weeds in it, but nowhere near what it was like before, where it was all weeds and no grass. So this has come along beautifully. The daylilies over here were removed and replanted, and they've all got new growth, so they are very happy. Well, this was a huge deal for me because that yard was such a mess. From the time I first bought the property 10 years ago, it was awful. It literally took me 6 months to clear it out, and I was working pretty diligently at it. So that was an issue, and now I have this beautiful expansive green. Yes, there are some weeds in it, but who cares? It's green. It looks like a yard, finally. So next, I want to show you one of the problem areas. This is a problematic area because after everything was seeded and graded, a mulch truck came in and sort of tore things up a bit. That's going to have to be tinkered with to get it back into shape. The area here, this is the corner of my lot, is just mulched and waiting for some plantings. I am probably going to put a couple of evergreens, large evergreens, in here. I would eventually like to make a sort of, well, you know, as they say, friendly fence to block off my property from my neighbor's property. Here's my neighbor's property. Just because I think it's overall a good idea to create some sort of perimeter. The last perimeter, there is a little green stake over here and another one over here, consisted of a rope strung between the two stakes to let my dog know which side of the property line she was supposed to stay on. And believe it or not, even though she could have walked under the rope or stepped over the rope or walked around it, she paid attention and she stayed in her own yard because of it. But I think permanently I'm probably going to want something a little more substantial. So let's go take a look at what's going in here. Okay, that area is where a mulch truck came in. The job was almost done and the mulch we ran out of mulch. So we had to have a mulch truck come in, leave some more mulch, and they were not careful. Came in, and that whole area is not very smooth. So the landscapers are going to come in and smooth that out and reseed the grass in that area. But the mulched area that sort of spans the corner of my yard, and that is my northeast corner. It's one of the darkest areas of the yard. Well, I can't really say that because my yard is dark all over. I have a lot of shade in my yard. But that one, it's under an oak tree, my neighbor's oak, and my neighbor has some conifers behind it as well. So that's an area that doesn't really get much light. But I think we can probably make do now that it's no longer getting shaded from my oak tree or my neighbor Robin's walnut tree. Of course, mine fell over and hers she had removed. So I think that's going to lighten it up a little. And the plants that I'm putting in that area are two wonderful little conifers that are like this big that my neighbor Jane found in her yard. So that's the offer I couldn't refuse. And you'll see why in a bit. But let's go take a look at those. I'm going to show you where they are, and you'll see that they need to be moved. and they certainly can't be allowed to grow there. So these are the ones that are coming to my house. Okay, right here, this little guy is a little baby evergreen, and he is coming over to my yard. And right here, right there, is another little evergreen that is coming to live at my house. Now, the first one might be a blue spruce. That was the one that was in the little rocked-in flower bed next to the rhododendron tree. That was the first one that I showed. That is growing in deep, deep shade right now, and it's probably 2 feet away from her house. It cannot stay there. There's no way. And of course, the second one is growing up through the crack between her driveway and her back porch. It's a concrete porch, and that's where it's growing, right out of the crack. So both of those are going to come to my house and live, and I have no concerns about them at all. And I will show you in a minute why I don't. But the next thing, because we're taking this chronologically, on the way back to my house from across the street, I filmed some work that the township did earlier this week. So let's... The township came in a couple of days ago and dug a little tiny trench right along the edge of the road. Now, this is my hedge, my property here. I wish I had known before I had all the mulch put on there, but still, they did a very neat, tidy job, and I got off a lot easier than the neighbors who were not home when they came. So let's take a look at that. Well, they brought in some massive equipment. At one point, they had 9 trucks here. I didn't think the township had 9 trucks. I mean, in other words, I didn't think they owned 9 trucks. And they wanted to dig a little trench along the edge of the road on both sides. And I was at home when they brought their trucks out, and I counted 11 men at that was the height of the workmen hanging around there. There was 11. For most of the time there were fewer, but at one point 11 of them. And I went out and asked them what they were doing, and they showed me, and they said they were going to be very careful, and I was very, very polite. And I explained I had just had the place landscaped, and they had just put down new mulch, and oh my, I hope they weren't going to do any serious damage, and my poor little old lady routine, basically. So every property on either side of that street has like 6-8-inch trenches. Me, I have a little 2-inch line going down my property, which shows you it pays to be nice to the city workers. If you smile and you speak nicely to them, you will get what you want out of it, because they have no real desire to hurt you or your property. It's just that, if it's easier for them to just plow a big trench through, that's what they're going to do, unless there's some reason for them not to. And some poor pathetic old lady, which is what I was doing pitiful old lady, just begging them not to be too harsh on my property. As my grandmother used to say, you get so much more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So, actually, that should be so many more flies. Can't believe I did that. We were just talking about that on Wordy Wednesday. So many more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So, that was it, but I did want you to see that. And there is a lesson to take away from this. Always be nice to the road people. Always. You will be glad you did. So here is what everything was leading up to about those little conifers. So let's take a look at Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking to yourselves, what on earth is she expecting from those little tiny twig plants? And this is what I am expecting. This is Lazarus. As you can see, Lazarus is about 2.5 feet tall, and beyond him are Mary and Martha. It's Martha, and one in the back is Mary. They are both over 7 feet tall. All right, there's a little friend of mine. Yes, baby. All right, come on. It's okay. And all 3 of these plants started off as little twigs from the same neighbor. Lazarus is the newest. He had a very rocky start in life. He was extremely young and got run over by my plumber's truck. And he was squished as flat as a little pancake. He came out looking like a fan. It was terrible. And he lost about 2 years worth of growing time. But he's doing really well now. I trained a new leader up for him. With a conifer, you need a leader. And that is this piece right here. It's the one branch that grows up taller than any of the others and eventually forms the tree trunk, as you can see. Let me take you a little closer. As you can see, that's Martha and Mary. They each have that single spike going straight up to the top. Now, a little word about conifers. If you start cutting underneath here, so that you can get the lawnmower in, that is never going to grow back. They do not regrow branches from the bottom. They grow upwards, they grow out from the top. So, if you are lucky enough to have some nice conifers like this, you have to be very careful how you trim them. Well, Mary and Martha, the big ones, have been in my yard for about 6 years, I think. And they started off as little bitty seedlings, like the 2 over in Jane's yard growing out of the cracks right now. They came from Jane's yard too. And then Lazarus came 2 years later. And my plumber did not see him, drove right over him with his truck, and he came up like a fan. He was a 2-dimensional tree. He looked like something out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. When the steamroller rolls over him, they just shoot up, but, Well, that's what he looked like. And he had 2 really rough years recovering. But recover he did. He's growing strong now. He's fat, healthy little plant now. It took some doing. It's not like I was able to just walk away. I had to mulch him very carefully in the winter and make sure that he was extremely well protected. And I drove a garden stake in next to him, and I'm sure you saw the clips, and clipped his little trunk to the garden stake to keep it growing up straight. And I had to choose a leader. He had lost his leader somewhere, and that's that piece of tree that goes straight up. It's the apex of the tree. It's what you put the star on for your Christmas tree. And that's very important, because I don't know if you've ever seen, I have seen evergreens grow up with 2 leaders, and it's just very unattractive. And it's not good for the tree either. So I had to create a new leader for him and just choose the strongest of his little upright branches and clip it onto that plant stake to make sure that he was growing the way he was supposed to. So he wanted to live. So I'm delighted. I really am. Mary and Martha are over 7 feet tall now. So I'm not concerned about the little tiny saplings taking root. They are from the same neighbor's yard. They will be going into my yard. They're going to get the same care and conditions. And I would say the odds are very, very good that they will survive and flourish. So that's why I'm not concerned about the tiny little size. The other thing, of course, I'm sure you noticed was Audie. Audie, he's a little spoiled. Little. When it's time for him to come in, he doesn't like to have to walk up the steps and come in himself. He likes me to come down the steps, pick him up, and carry him inside. And he will meow at me until I pick him up, take him in, and that's what he was doing. When I was filming, he came over with his meow meow, pick me up, and carry me into the house. If you love me, you won't make me walk. So I did. I picked him up, I carried him in, but I wasn't quite as quick as he wanted because I stayed there filming. I didn't just drop the camera and bring him in. So that's why he's a little ticked off at me. I was a failure as a cat mommy today. He will get over it, but right now he is at my feet with his butt pointing my way and his face pointing the opposite way so that I know I'm in the doghouse with him. And he wants to make sure I'm extremely clear about the fact that I let him down. So, I love you anyway, baby. Kiss, kiss. He'll get over it. I've got cat treats. I can bribe him. All right. So that's the landscape update. I'm going to be cutting grass this weekend. And this is our Saturday video. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have a new shop spotlight for you. And we will be announcing the winner for Lisa's giveaway. So stay tuned. We'll see y'all tomorrow.